Daniel Craig is the most influential celebrity in the world of modern watches. I know that is a bold claim, but today I am going to back it up. Welcome to Doug's Watches, the thinking watch channel. Here I talk art, design, history, theory and philosophy and how they all relate to the world of watches. And if that sounds good to you, do make sure to like and subscribe. So Daniel Craig, an Omega ambassador for the ages, responsible for popularising the Seamaster 300 meter. A huge collection of vintage Omegas are in his watchbox, and he's someone who Omega used to stealth launch their watches. He is well established in this world. It might seem like he's Omega through and through, but Daniel Craig's on-screen relationship with watches actually began with Rolex, specifically a black dial Datejust in the film Layer Cake. Now, Layer Cake would secure Craig his role in Bond, and I think this watch is an apt choice, as after all this watch is actually quite close to that Explorer that both Ian Fleming and his in-book Bond wore. But Daniel Craig burst onto our screens in 2006's Casino Royale wearing an Omega Planet Ocean, the reference 29005091. So that's a black dial Omega on a rubber strap sporting 600 metres of water resistance, a watch that came to market for the first time only 1 year prior to the release of the film. And with its selection, both Omega and the Bond franchise sent a massive message to both the consumer and to Rolex. If we wind the clock back to 1995, we find ourselves in the midst of the beaver years of the Omega brand, and they're working hard to re-establish Omega as the primary competition to Rolex, and Bond was essential to this. By appearing on the wrist of Pierce Brosnan's Bond, it sent a clear message. Omega was the watch of choice for the man who demanded simply the best. But their watches featured not as watches, but instead techie gadgets that could be lasers and explode. They were wacky and zany before anything else. But despite 2002's Die Another Day's box office success, critically, the film met mediocre reviews. And at the same time in 2002, an incredibly important film launched, The Bourne Identity. This film marks the post-9/11 cultural moment. Bourne's amnesia, of course, being representative of the West having lost its way. Bourne fundamentally changed action films from their zany romps into gritty dramas. Bond had experimented with this idea before under Timothy Dalton, but it was Daniel Craig's Bond that was to land in this moment of great cultural change. And that is what we see in Craig's watches in Casino Royale. They are not MI6 issue tools, but instead watches. Now, the 29005091 is a very deliberate choice. It is in equal parts distancing itself from the blue-dialed Seamaster of Brosnan, but also separating itself from the iconic Submariner of Sean Connery by simply being better than it. The true modern dive watch to match our modern Bond. It's still a black dive watch, but it is resistant to 600 metres, is chronometer certified, has a helium escape valve, and is on a rubber strap. The comfortable, durable, maybe even athletic option. Ready for our action man Bond. Later on in Casino Royale, we see the 22208000, the Seamaster 300 meter on the blue dial, still sporting that aluminium bezel, not yet updated to the ceramic that is common today. While this is the direct successor to the watch of Brosnan's Bond, the watch again is about distancing Bond from Rolex and instead placing him within the realm of Omega. We have that famous scene on the train with Vesper, where she asks Bond if he has a Rolex, and he goes, no, it's an Omega. The implication being that an Omega is so good it could be confused with a Rolex. Some quite ham-fisted product placement, sure, but it works. And just like later on when Bond is given the chance to have his martini shaken or stirred, his response is simply, do I look like I give a damn? This is all about showing that Craig is a different Bond. But it's much more than that. Daniel Craig is the rewriting of the Bond story, a fresh start. Casino Royale goes back in time to show how Bond achieved his 00 status. And by putting Craig at a casino table with an Omega sticking out of his sleeve, the Broccoli's are writing a new canon, one where Omega is the new Rolex. Now, Daniel Craig is responsible for an awful lot more in the world than just the rise of Omega in the watch world. One of those things is also what I like to think of as the Reesification of men's fashion. And the Omega watch fits in with this. We can clearly see this in the sequel to Casino Royale, 2008's Quantum of Solace. Just look at this outfit. Expensive Tom Ford polo shirt, well-fitted jeans, and his 22015000 Omega Planet Ocean. I think this is how many men would like to see themselves. Now, I know, this was the watch Omega was trying to sell in 2008, sure, but it does annoy me a tad. Craig shouldn't have been wearing this. He should have worn a watch from Casino Royale. Quantum of Solace picks up moments after the credits on Casino Royale roll. Bond is on a revenge quest that takes him to South America, and at no point does he have time to swing by the AD to pick up Omega's latest dive watch. From here out, though, the watches of Craig's Bond get a little less consistent in style and keep changing, and there's something poetic in that. The tone and messages of the 5 films are varied. It's a mess, but I'm not a film channel, I'm a watch one. The blue-dialed Aqua, Terra and Skyfall brings out Craig's eyes, yes, and it also marks the start of Omega focusing more so on their non-300 metre, non-Speedmaster offerings outside of the Bond world. But later on in Skyfall, we'll see him wear the then current Planet Ocean, the snappily named 232 3042 2101001. Spectre, we see the blue dial Aqua Terra Master Chronometer, and of course the Seamaster 300 233 3241 2101 Again, Omega, please, make some shorter references. But this watch, well, that I believe saw the arrival of the iconic black and grey Bond NATO strap. And then 6 years and a pandemic pass, without any new Bond action. Daniel Craig returns for his final outing as Bond with the No Time to Die Seamaster, a watch that I think, even launched without the backing of Bond, would have done superbly well. This watch read the room impeccably. 2021, we're at peak Black Bay hype. People loved vintage and they loved Fotina. It's a strap monster, sure, and that red script and second hand is just amazing. I think if we put this No Time to Die Seamaster next to the watch we first saw Craig's Bond in, it shows how far the watch industry and especially Omega came over 15 years. The Planet Ocean, with its incredible specs and fresh design, clearly was a watch trying to embrace modernity just as Craig's Bond was. But when we look at the No Time to Die Seamaster 300 metre, with its faux vintage look, MOD-owned marking and tropical bezel, this watch is very much trying to embrace its past, and so was this Bond film. Spoilers for the film, but Bond saves the world from an evil villain based on an island. It's not so different to Scaramanga in The Man with the Golden Gun, or Dr. No in Dr. No. And while Daniel Craig might not be responsible for the shift, I think he's responsible for representing to the mass market this tonal shift in the watch world. When Daniel Craig's Bond appeared, the watch world was scrambling for relevancy. The effects of the quartz crisis were still being felt as brands pivoted appropriately, and many had decided that to be new was the way to go. Case in point, Omega with the coaxial escapement, and of course Richard Mille with their futuristic and brutalistic designs. But we get to 2021, and the watch brands had changed their tune, embracing their antiquity as their selling point, and Daniel Craig's Bond watch evolution perfectly depicts this. This progression we can see in the watches Craig now dons in his other roles. Still an Omega brand ambassador and the most recent Bond, he is a cultural force for many. And as Benoit Blanc in the Knives Out series, Craig sports various vintage-esque Omegas. In the first film, the Seamaster DeVille 166020, then the Omega Seamaster 1948, one of their most recent vintage-leaning reissues in Glass Onion. His watch in the next Knives Out film, Wake Up Dead Man, is a lovely blue-dialed DeVille Tresor. And why this change? Well, Blanc is a different man, a 1940s-style film noir detective type. Would he, as a fashion-conscious man, wear a dive watch? Likely not. He's not your Bondian heterosexual character, but instead a gay one, married to Hugh Grant no less. And I think this is one more force acting on the Swiss watch world, pointing us towards more dressy watches, and I don't really know of a way of quantifying that other than by looking at how Omega use Craig as one of their ambassadors. Daniel Craig is culturally impactful. We know that, because Omega use his wrist to launch their most notable watches that they want not only us enthusiasts to know about, but also the mainstream consumer as well. White dial Speedmasters, aluminium bezel Seamasters, and of course that red and gold Seamaster. Because what Daniel Craig wears matters, and he is the most influential celebrity in the world of watches. And that's why I think his personal collection is so damn important. See, it's one thing Craig wearing what they give him on the set of Bond, and another for him to own something of his own volition. Back in 2023, Craig appeared on Esquire's Dialed In. He tells a story of his first watch being a vintage Omega. He's got vintage manual wind Speedmasters, the Planet Ocean he wore in Casino Royale, a 1960s Seamaster 300, a Memo-Matic, and a few other watches that he had on screen. Recently, he's also been spotted in a Seamaster 120 metre, and it's clear to see that Craig, even though he's limited to only Omega's watches, is keen to experiment and explore the back catalogue of the brand and find a new identity after Bond. I think that is quite important. As the hair and the clothes evolve, as he changes, so have his watches, and so does the rest of the watch world. Our focus seems to be moving away, more so from the luxury brands and the mundane releases, to the vintage, to the quirky, and to the different. We have grown up with Daniel Craig, and that makes him the most influential celebrity in the world of watches. As ever, thanks for watching. If you want to help me make more videos like this, do consider becoming a channel member. It helps me out just a little bit. If not, do remember to like and subscribe before you go. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.